You guys are good.
All right, thank you. So we're doing a talk on resurrecting Ettercap. As you know, it got its first release in about 6 years recently, and this is really a story about how two no-name guys pretty much reached out and took over the project and are moving it forward. So who are we? I'm Eric Milam. I'm a senior security consultant with Accuvant Labs. On the Twitters, I'm known as Bravo Hacks, and in IRC, I'm Johnny Bravo. And that's for those of you old enough to remember, it's the Greg Brady Johnny Bravo, not the cartoon Johnny Bravo. So,
Just take both.
yeah, go.
Yeah,
well, I'm
sure.
not pretty enough to be the other guy. So, and Pure Hate says I'm too fat. So,
So I'm Emilio Escobar. I'm a principal consultant for Labs, and there's my Twitter there. I'm not on IRC, at least on Freenode, and yep.
So a couple quick call outs. Of course, Hackers for Charity, great organization. If you guys get an opportunity, I'm sure you guys probably bought shirts and stuff this weekend and hats. Mubix, thank you very much for letting us be here. It's a great honor. Pure Hate, of course, he's, like I said, my brother from another mother. We do a lot of pen testing together at Accuvant, and which pretty much constitutes me sleeping while he does all the work. And then since I'm the senior, I get to come in and take all the credit. Johnny Long, who is inspiration to me as well. He sent me an email this last summer about a script I wrote that we're going to talk about that really gave me the confidence to be able to do this project and to even be up here speaking in front of you guys. I was running around the office saying, guess who emailed me today, and just totally fanboying out. And then Jason Street, again, he's the guy who gave me the pep talk for these talks. He told me I was going to suck. Pretty bad, but he said, don't worry about it. Everybody's their hardest critic, and he's been awesome. So some of the topics we're going to talk about: easy-creds, simple bash script that I wrote, Ettercap 073 versus the kernel 2.6.39-4 and forward, of course. Some of the communications with Allure and Naga that we had. And then Emilio is going to talk about the release of Ettercap 074 Lazarus and the future of the tool. So easy-creds. It was basically just a simple bash script that I put together. It's a wrapper for a lot of the common man-in-the-middle tools that I use when I'm doing a pen test. SSL strip, Ettercap's its anchor, dsniff, URL snarf. I've also added in options for sidejacking if you want to do that. It uses hamster and ferret. And then there's also wireless attacks that I added into it that include being able to set up a fake AP fairly quickly, an evil twin AP, as well as a Metasploit attack. And then at the request of a few other people, I added in a MDK3 to DOS people off of their wireless LANs so that hopefully they connect to your fake AP. So why did I write it? Well, basically, I got an IM from a person that I was working with, and he was over in Germany actually, and he said he's a Windows guy, and he used Kane, which is fine, but he decided that he was going to use Ettercap for whatever reason. I have no idea. So he fired up Ettercap and very quickly DOSed the entire broadcast domain he was sitting in. So what I did was once he hit me up, I told him, hey, did you do this? Did you do this? And he's like, yeah, no, I didn't do any of that stuff. So I'm like, okay. And I put together a really simple bash script for him based on a post that I found on a forum. I think it was the Offensive Security Forums by a poster with the name of Lucifer, which basically was a fake AP setup. And then I just took it and converted it. Everything was hard-coded. And then over the course of a year, I've kind of worked on easy-creds until it got to the point where it's at now. So Ettercap, SSL strip, and the 2.6934 kernel. Ettercap by itself, 073, worked just fine. No issues at all. Everything was good. Exactly what you would expect. However, when you introduce SSL strip into the equation, I found out through dissecting, it basically was throwing all these L3 errors, and then it would crash. So what I found out was when the IP tables for SSL sniff got implemented manually, that's when the errors actually started to fly. I really have no understanding as to why it did it. I'm sure all you guys are a lot smarter than me, and ladies are a lot smarter than me. But basically what it was is it was an EPERM issue that was getting tossed out, and which is odd because I was in Backtrack, I was running everything as root, so I never really found out what the exact issue was. So if anybody out there knows, we'd really appreciate it. So easy-creds was still successful. Ettercap was really still working, but you just get a flood of these errors. You don't really see any of the credentials that you snagged, and it would basically run out of resources within about 5 minutes and crash. It wouldn't be able to start a new thread. So fixing it, or how I lost $1,000 in a day, which I still haven't paid you, by the way. I was combing through the source code. I'm not a coder by any means. I was looking through books. I was trying to find out what was going on. I knew it was a pthreads issue. I knew kind of the idea of what was going on. And I'd been asking people for help, and there wasn't really a lot of feedback. I'd posted on the Ubuntu forums. I'd posted on, I think I'd actually...
Even Backtrack.
Backtrack forums as well. And I just, no one really knew what was going on. And when you search for L3 errors on the internet, you just get a lot of other posts of people saying, I'm getting this error and I have no idea what to do with it. So that wasn't really, the Googles wasn't really a lot of help either. So I basically said, hey, get some interest going. I'm going to offer $500 for each of these issues, because what had happened was easy-creds actually got introduced to the Backtrack repos at the same time 5R1 came out with a new kernel, and so it basically really just rendered my tool unusable. So, of course, I had a vested interest in keeping it going, and fortunately, Emilio was like, within a day, I think, was like, oh, I think I see the problem, and here you go. So he's going to go into that a little bit later, but he was able to fix the L3 errors and the resource exhaustion right off the bat. So how this all kind of started was I was at HackerCon in West Virginia, and I was giving a talk on easy-creds, automating man-in-the-middle for winning, and basically, kind of the ins and outs of why man-in-the-middle is not really cheating and that type of stuff. And me and Iron Geek got into a live discussion in the middle of the talk about the last release of Ettercap being about 6 years ago or more. So I just decided, hey, I'm going to go email Allure, and I'm going to tell them that, we want to take over the project. And, when I look back, is it hubris? No, because I'm definitely not smart. As you can see, stupidity maybe, and naive definitely. So this is the actual email that I sent to him. Now, I'd never talked to Allure or Naga before in my life, and as you can see, the subject line is request to officially take over Ettercap NG development. That's a pretty bold email for the first email you send out. And as you can see in here, it's just basically like, hey, we fixed some stuff. Would you mind if we take over the project? So Allure emails me back. Who are you? And after some email exchanges, we basically, I told him who I was. I sent him some of the videos from easy-creds and reached out to Emilio and said, hey, send him your resume, or send him, kind of what we do and who we are. And within a couple hours, we were made project admins on the SourceForge page. So, holy shit, I'm in charge of Ettercap. I'm on cloud 9. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm high-fiving myself in my office. I go out and tell my wife, hey, I'm in charge of Ettercap. What? And she's like, how much money are we going to make? And I'm like, nothing. But it's awesome. You got to trust me. And
same question that I got.
Yeah. So basically, I was, InfoSec would totally, and I was all excited. And then it was, holy shit, I'm in charge of Ettercap. Because it's like, it's Ettercap. Everybody out here probably has a story, or has told a story, or has used the tool, or has some awesome thing that they've done with it.
Or knows about it. Yeah.
And everybody knows about it. It's in like every distro, or in the repos of every distro available in the world. And, this is a tool that us taking it over, we can't get it wrong. We just can't, because the community won't let us. But why do the doubts creep in, right? What if we can't do it? What if it's no good? What if people hate it? And the other thoughts that come along from growing up in a house where daddy didn't love you enough. But seriously, if you look at it, so Here's my stats on the day I sent the email to Allure for easy-creds on SourceForge. And this was a tool that I wrote that I never expected anybody else in the world to use. I wrote it really for myself. Didn't think much of it. And there's 466 downloads on October 24th of last year.
That's like 3 months worth of time.
Yeah.
Almost.
So here's Ettercap on that same day. 762,496 downloads, right? So, I mean, it really shows you the difference in that. So lots of concern. Even Jesus was worried for me, right? When the Son of God doesn't have your back, you should probably like reassess what's going on. But as you guys know, we did it on December 4th, 2011. Ettercap 074 Lazarus was released to the community. It got a lot of great feedback. We're always looking for more feedback, what we did right, what we did wrong. And as you were asking earlier, yes, we have shirts. So it's an official project because we have T-shirts on. So without the shirts, of course, it's not official. So I'm going to go ahead and hand the rest of it over to Emilio, and then I'm going to pop back in at the end.
So we're going to talk a little bit about what we did for Lazarus and what we're working on right now for the next release and future plans. So basically, like Eric said, he was running Ettercap 0.3. It was running fine, but in the background, it really wasn't. There was some issues with it. So I made a lot of bug fixes to the code. There were some known exploits for Ettercap. There was one where it had a buffer overflow when reading some files, so those were fixed. I fixed the compilation on OSX Lion and OSX Snow Leopard. The L3 errors, I'm going to get back to it a little bit, but yeah, I fixed those and the thread exhaustion, resource exhaustion issue. So the Lion compilation, what I did is basically fix the automake files and everything to make it work. And actually, I'll talk about it later, but we derived away from automake and autoconf, and now we're using CMake for the next version. So if any of you guys want to develop on it or look at the code or build it from code, then you will need CMake.
Is it a homebrew or?
Well, CMake fixes a lot of the issues between OSs. We had some issues with OpenBSD when we're using automake and autoconf. CMake will take care of those. So it's easier to use. It's actually much nicer to use, because you don't have to generate a configure script and run the configure script. The CMake, there's a file that you modify, just one file, and you say, okay, I want GTK on or off, or this on or off, and then you just run CMake. It creates it, builds it, and installs it. So it's easier than running the old way of autoconf and automake. So the Lion, there were some issues with the autoconf and automake. A lot of people were having issues when they were using libraries from other than Mac ports or some other one that's just also popular. So everyone that emails me, I'm like, I will use Mac ports instead of that. And then they can come back and say, it works now. So I guess that works. The L3 errors, my take on it is that a newer kernel of Linux will deny any duplicate packets that are going to the same destination, pretty much the same exact packet. So what was going on is with SSL strip, you need to enable IP forward. With Ettercap, you have to disable it because Ettercap itself sends the packet to and for the destination and source. So having IP forward and having Ettercap both sending the packet at the same time, the kernel got to a point where he analyzed the stack and was like, wait a minute, I'm going to deny your packet. So the EPRM was actually coming from the kernel and not the fact that root couldn't send that packet. It was higher than the user level. So the errors are actually still there, except you don't actually see them when you run SSL strip now along with Ettercap and enable IP forward. So it works now. The only issue is if you enable IP forward, Ettercap's filters are affected because you can't run replace on the filter because the modified packet will make it to the user. It will be the original packet. So and I'll talk about it later for the next version of what we're working on. The thread exhaustion, Eric was actually right when he posted on the forums, which was pretty funny. I thought about it. He actually posted the problem in the forum, and people didn't actually answer. And then it took me a little bit, because I kind of deviated from that and was like working on maybe this is the issue. So I kind of modified a lot of stuff, and then went back, read his post, and then it's like, wait a minute, this actually makes more sense. So pthreads, I can get into it, but the way it works is when you destroy a thread that's not detached, those resources are not released until you call pthread join. So the way those threads were being destroyed was in calling pthreads join. So every time you will see a new thread start and it will die, you wouldn't see the resources being let go by the process. So now there's an ability to create detached threads, or what it does is for non-detached threads, it detaches it and then destroys it. So that way it destroys the resources on the spot. So the process size or the memory consumption doesn't grow. What else? Yeah, that's pretty much 7.4. For 7.5, which is what we're working now.
Hey guys, can I interrupt for real quick?
Yeah.
Do we have any vegetarians here? One? Yes? Okay. Alright, good. Sorry.
That's okay. For the new version, we're working on a lot of stuff, but mostly we're working on plugins and additional features that people have come back to us and said, "Hey, it would be nice if this, if you could do this," or actually, people have committed code to, enhance the functionality of the tool. So MBNS spoofing, it works the same way as the DNS spoofer. I got it to a point where it spoofs the response, but it doesn't actually send the SMB challenge to get the hashes back. So I got to add that to it. But right now, the way it works is you specify a NetBIOS name and an IP address, and when somebody tries to ping that NetBIOS name or request it, it will come back with that IP address. SSL strip built in, so that kind of takes away from the whole need of the IP forward and filters not working. That's a little bit more challenging writing in C than Python, so that's about 80% complete.
And that was totally inspired by Moxie Marlin Spike. I want to make sure he gets
we
credit.
emailed him and asked him if it was okay, and he was like, go for it. It makes sense to have both tools running at the same time because the whole point is to gather credential information. So it makes a lot more sense for us to add it in the tool. But it will behave exactly the same way it does right now, where it acts as a web server. It gets a request, it sends it out to the server, and then strips the HTTPS, but keeps track of those links. So whenever somebody requests an SSL link, it actually goes out and does the SSL connection and sends it, and then does the whole response thing. So the user won't know, what's going on, hopefully. Multiple filter loading. So right now you can enable multiple filters, and then you can actually load them as disabled, and then enable it as you're running the tool. IPv6 support. You can now scan and capture packets from IPv6 nodes and ARP them as well, or do man-in-the-middle attacks, poison them. And then we're also working on other stuff. We're kind of have tossed around ideas for dissectors that we want to do. VoIP came out as one of the ideas that it would be cool if you could record like VoIP calls on like MP3 or whatever. And then any other dissectors or protocols that you guys would like to see added. We definitely need feedback from the community because right now, we just add stuff that we think it would be nice to have, but it definitely helps if you guys come back to us and say, hey, I want to see this or I don't want to see that. But that will be .5, which is it's a lot of work being done, especially with the SSL strip. So even having that inside the tool, it will be a huge deal for the users of the tool. So we're also talking about a major release, which we'll probably call it 1.0. And we have some stuff that are cooking in the back burner, and hopefully we can pull them off. But we just don't want to add small features, and by small, like plugins or fix bugs. We want to actually make it like an actual thing. And one of the guys came up with a malicious routing tool. So it would want to be like a malicious router tool. So it's not just Ettercap that you run. We want it to be something that you can load it up, plug it in a network, and it will do its thing, and you will get the feedback from it or the intel. So some of the stuff that we're talking about is having it be like its own kernel, where instead of running at user level, it runs at the kernel level. It actually has a lot of benefits to it. Right now, we use this PCAP to capture network traffic, and we all know that doesn't capture 100% of the traffic, depending on how busy the network is. So having it on the kernel level, it's easier because once you poison somebody to send you the traffic, then we can write stuff to the actual drivers, the NIC drivers, to say every time you get an interrupt with a packet coming in, we want to process it. So it's not whatever the kernel wants to send to the user level, not where the kernel level. So we should see almost everything, or more than we see now with PCAP. And we also want to build an API where people can write modules and then they can load it. Modules meaning different functionalities, maybe plugins or other things they want to see, even more dissectors where you can write your own and then just do a insmod and load it, and it will work. And an extensions framework, one thing that we toss around, even for maybe not for .5, or maybe before the major release, if there's any release in between, is to have the ability to let people write Python or Perl modules, and by that I mean plugins. So you can write your own Perl plugin and it will work with Ettercap. I'm thinking of Perl because Perl can do FFI, so it behaves with C code very well. Python doesn't handle it as FFI, but I can make a C API that talks to Python. So those are the two languages that we're talking about. LUA, we kind of mentioned it as well, which is, people who run Nmap know how to write code for it. So those are the kind of stuff that we're thinking of for a major release.
Ever thought about Ruby?
Eh.
Too much?
We want to make sure, I don't mean to cut in, but yeah, we want to make sure that this is something where everybody in the community now feels like they can be a part of it,
Right.
Which is similar to Metasploit and Ruby, the Ruby language and how they do
Yeah,
that.
we'll definitely add more languages to it. But in the short run, these are the easiest ones to integrate. But if Ruby can be integrated, well, by all means, we'll do it. So yeah, because I know Metasploit is all in Ruby, so a lot of people will be happy if we do that. But Python, Perl are pretty popular as well. So it sure beats writing plugins in C code. So it's a huge benefit there. But yeah, I mean, any other ideas that you guys might have, we would like to hear from you guys. And we added, actually I should go back, for .5 we added more flags that you can pass to Ettercap, where you can disable SSL forgery completely. So users won't, you won't process SSL traffic, but it's not enabled by default. For the MBNS, I had to add a flag that would allow Ettercap to listen to broadcast traffic before it would just completely ignore it. So now you will see more DHCP and more of that type of traffic being dissected besides MBNS. We added the multiple filter. We added IPv6, like I mentioned. We added also a functionality that will let you use two interfaces for capture as well, or will let you use one interface and send out another to capture and send out via another interface. And there's also the bridge sniffing as well. So, but that was already there. So that's, yeah, pretty much from the technical standpoint what we have. And the current team, again, is myself, Sigmine. He's done a lot of work with the IPv6 stuff. Zero Chaos, he said he has some code that he needs to...
Yeah, he needs to push code.
Yeah. Pure Hate, he's helped us with a lot of ideas and kind of like road mapping things and everything. Plus it's street cred to have his name there. And then Eric and anyone else who's interested in joining will definitely take you. Right now it's only me doing all the plugin work. So .5, our date is what, June right now? July. So yeah, they got a lot of work to do before July. So any other person that wants to help out, definitely give us a shout.
So the wouldn't be complete without a soapbox slide. So, a lot of slack I get, a lot of grief I get from the people I work with is man in the middle's cheating, or you're gonna ruin the customer if you do that. But it's not cheating. As a pen tester, we're really looking for all the different attack vectors that a malicious user or a malicious person might use to get into the environment. And a lot of times I might not necessarily need to do a man in the middle, but I'll do it as a proof of concept just to show them. And one of the things that I always harp on is, you're doing it wrong. A man in the middle attack should be a targeted attack. You should have already done your research. You should know exactly who you're going to go after, what you're going to go after, when you're sitting there. What happens is a lot of douchebag pen testers come in, and then they poison just the entire broadcast domain, which includes a lot of times HSRP, which is the hot standby routing protocol, which is 2 physical NICs that create a virtual NIC, which the virtual NIC's the gateway. So if you poison all 3 of those, you've essentially DOSed the entire LAN. At what you're sitting in, the traffic's just going to keep going around in a circle because you're poisoning everything. So that's another reason when people go out and they do this. I mean, if your attack starts with downloading Kane from the internet or man Ettercap, you should probably think twice about doing that. So, the other thing too is another reason why man in the middle is not really cheating is there's defenses against it.
Right.
Cisco has dynamic ARP inspection. So the way that works, I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but basically you run DHCP snooping for like a couple of weeks. It builds a nice little table for you. And then you run your dynamic ARP inspection. What happens when ARP request or reply goes out? If it doesn't match the table, it gets dropped. So that's really the only thing that's ever stopped me from being able to pull this off. And the only reason it stopped me was because it was actually something that the customer implemented after we'd given it to him as a finding. Now, I don't know if pfSense does anything like that or any of the other Juniper or any of those, but dynamic ARP inspection is really the only thing that's going to prevent at least an ARP poisoning man in the middle. I mean, but there's still DHCP, there's still DNS spoofing, there's all kinds of things that you can do. ICMP. So, but why don't they fix it? Budgetary constraints, right? A lot of times it's now you've got to replace all your switches because, at least with Cisco, in order to run dynamic ARP inspection, you have to upgrade your hardware. You have to upgrade the software, but the software doesn't run on the hardware because it requires more memory. So it's a vicious cycle where now they have to replace all their layer 2 devices. And who has the money for that if you're, as he was talking about before, it runs the business, but it's not really running the business, right? There's different assets, and people think it always just worked, so it's going to be fine, and it's not a big deal. So as I stated, ARP poisoning can be defended. So.
Well, Mitnick didn't think NTM was cheap.
Well, I can show you lots of screenshots of customers who that I've been at that don't think, that think it's a pretty serious deal. I mean, it's not usually the first thing I go for, but sometimes if they're really solid, it's a vector. I mean, attackers aren't going to be like, oh,
After
well, this
spending
is
10 minutes at
cheating.
the Boston airport.
Yeah. So, that does tend to come up in our industry a little bit, but the main thing is basically, do it right. It's a targeted attack. If you're running a VM, don't poison, 30, 40 machines. I mean, your VM is not a switch. It can't handle that traffic. You're doing a targeted attack against 5 or 10 devices at a time. Let it run for 20, 30 minutes, see what comes out. If you're not getting enough traffic through there, create another victim list and see what you got. So, thank you guys very much. Don't forget to give the Hackers for Charity. We appreciate your time. It's an honor to be up here in front of you guys.